There have been tons of footage of Epstein coming out, and it's been happening over the past few months. But today we have even more footage for you, footage that you've probably never seen before. If you're curious about how he interacts with his victims, this video will show you. So here we have some brand new footage that has never been seen before of inside of the prison. Let's see actually what goes on here.
10th, 2019, you see it says L tier, right? The L tier section of the Metropolitan Correctional Center. This footage is from after 3:15 a.m. and you can see these correctional officers walking around, writing, seemingly talking on the phone, right outside of Epstein's cell, a few feet away. Why is that significant? Because this was the night Epstein. The New York Post says this newly released footage shows correctional officers Tova Noel and Michael Thomas. We've talked about them before. They were both arrested and charged in connection with allegedly falsifying reports to make it look like they properly made the rounds that night. Charges were ultimately dropped, but they were fired. And the investigation revealed that they just were allegedly negligent in their duties, with Thomas and Noel surfing the web for motorcycles and sports news, furniture, that they fell asleep, that Noel allegedly admitted that they didn't do the required checks on Epstein.
People can become very compliant on the job when most of the time nothing happens. When they're essentially sitting as a security, most of the time nothing is going to go down. The job can get boring. They're going to get on their phones. They're going to go do things that are outside of the description of the job, until something does go wrong and they're held responsible. And that's exactly what happened here.
Thomas allegedly saying, quote, "We messed up." This was according to an indictment that they both faced. So you look at this video and you're saying, okay, does this video show that they didn't do what they were supposed to do? And remember, it was determined that Epstein himself sometime between 10:30 p.m. the night before and 6:30 a.m. the morning of. That is when his body was found. So in this footage, Epstein is apparently just feet away in his cell. He's just down a set of stairs behind the officer station on the 9th floor of the L tier wing. And when you're looking at this, I want to put it into some context here. So according to the DOJ's Inspector General report that was released in June of 2023, it stated, quote, "At approximately 10:39 p.m., an unidentified CO appeared to walk up the L tier stairway and then reappeared within view of the camera at 10:41 p.m. This is believed to be the last time anyone entered L tier before approximately 6:30 a.m. on August 10th. Between approximately 10:40 p.m. on August 9th and just before 6:30 a.m. on August 10th, the OIG did not observe on the recorded video any CO or other individual enter any of the SHU tiers, which is consistent with CO Tova Noel and material handler Michael Thomas's admissions to the OIG that the SHU rounds and counts were not conducted during that time frame."
Now, I'm assuming that rounds are supposed to be made. I mean, we're talking about approximately an 8-hour window of time, which is, although it being the nighttime, seems to be something that would be a responsibility of someone on the job at that time.
And as we reported recently, because we did a whole episode on this as well, Noel is accused of Googling Jeffrey Epstein, searching about him shortly before his was found. And I go to the Google searches. So there was a document in the Epstein files that says, timeline analysis of desktop property user Tova Noel. Yeah, the desktop computers were investigated, were looked at, were forensically examined. August 10th, 2019, 5:52:29, user searches Google for, quote, "latest on Epstein in jail." August 10th, 2019, 5:43:03, user navigates in IE to this CNBC article. It says basically documents released about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. August 10th, 2019, 5:46:06, user navigates in IE to this other search. Jeffrey Epstein repeatedly refused to answer questions about allegations he orchestrated ring documents. There's another document titled Forensic Notes, LITS, Leonard Forensic Request for Examination of 2 Desktops from Bureau of Prisons. You go to page 23 and highlighted in yellow is Google search for latest on Epstein in jail.
All right, it looks like she was very interested for whatever reason on something going on with Epstein, which is very strange that these searches are going on right before he expires in his cell just feet away from their station.
So this is documentation that Noel seemingly was researching Jeffrey Epstein less than 40 minutes before Thomas would end up finding Epstein's in his cell. And as we covered in our previous sidebar, she was interviewed about this, and she basically said, look, I was just looking into him. I didn't really know much about him. I wanted to know who he was. And this footage that, again, we're showing you, this new piece of video, is just another piece of footage and layer to the Epstein part of his story. And even though Noel and Thomas, they were never criminally charged with Epstein. By the way, no one has ever been charged with Epstein.
Right.
The official determination was that he died. You had this allegation, and I mentioned this in the prior episode, just again puts it into context with what we're talking about here from this video. So apparently an inmate at the MCC spoke with the FBI, and there's a 5-page handwritten note of an interview with the inmate who claims that on the morning of August 10th, 2019, he hears officers shouting at 6:30 a.m., breathe, breathe. And then he allegedly hears an officer say, dudes, you killed that dude. A female guard replied, if he is dead, we're going to cover it up and he's going to have an alibi, my officers. And then you also have this allegation that inmates later on claim Miss Noel Jeffrey. To be clear, there is no corroborating evidence to back this up, and the DOJ's investigation concluded, quote, none of the inmates who were interviewed had any credible information suggesting Epstein's cause of death was something other than.
Now that's something we haven't seen before, and it was actually quite interesting, but there's many more videos that we need to take a look at, starting with this one.
So according to the Telegraph, this video of Jeffrey Epstein is of him seemingly in detention. I do wonder if this was when he was convicted of sex crimes back in Florida. Remember back in 2008, the sweetheart deal, pled guilty to state charges of solicitation of prostitution, including of a minor, right, procurement of a minor. This was in an effort to avoid the more serious federal charges. He was sentenced to 13 months in jail. There was a work release conditions as part of that. So this is him, and I'm going to show you the video in a minute.
Now, he mentioned that this was a sweetheart deal. That's because the work release that he mentioned, essentially Epstein was able to be in his home for, I think it was 13 hours per day to conduct any business, and then he would just have to go sleep in the prison at night, which was also like a lounge inside of the prison from what I understand. And during his work release, he was supposed to stay inside of his home, but he actually didn't. And he went everywhere, even getting on his jet and going to very far away places and then returning in the evening. So he definitely did not follow the restrictions that were given regarding the work release, and the authorities knew, but nothing was done about it.
Referencing two females. I say always females because I don't know the ages of a lot of these people, including in the videos, the ones that have been redacted out or the ones that are being mentioned. So he references these two females, and he talks about pictures on the wall, and I don't know, seemingly contracting a sexually transmitted disease from a man.
I'm pretending I'm talking to Darren. So, hi Darren. So Sarah and Nadia, are you guys having a good time? You can see I have a little sore on my face that I got from some black guy trying to kiss me. It's really disgusting.
Strange.
With his tongue. Oh, it's really, Anyway, I have pictures up on the wall. I had to borrow the Scotch tape to get the pictures on the wall. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Moving on, you got this strange one too, and it concerns director Woody Allen. So we have noted Woody Allen's connection to Epstein before, right? You have this photo of Epstein visiting Allen on what appears to be a film set. You have another photo, right? Epstein's laughing, this time sitting at the table. And Allen made news last year when, according to People, in a birthday letter to Jeffrey Epstein on his 63rd birthday in 2016, where he seemingly compared Jeffrey Epstein to Dracula. They were New York City neighbors, apparently. I'm just going to read you a part of it. It said, quote, being neighbors, my wife Sunyi and I have been invited for dinner many times, always accepting, always interesting. Wide variety of interesting people at every dinner, just about. Politicians, scientists, teachers, magicians, comedians, intellectuals, journalists, an entomologist, a concert pianist.
It's interesting that he says always interesting, and they were neighbors. Now, there's a whole deep dive that I should go to here on the channel regarding Woody Allen and his wife, and then Woody Allen, his wife, and the relationship with Epstein. It is a very strange story. But yeah, he was deeply in bed with everything that Epstein was up to.
I say well served. Often it's by some professional houseman, and just as often by several young women, reminding one of Castle Dracula, where Lugosi has 3 young female vampires who service the place. And the large phone and computer at his right hand does take some of the relaxed home cooking atmosphere out of it, but one can't have everything, not at Castle Dracula. And you even had this email where Epstein seems to joke about being accused of going to a pet convention when he visits Paris with director Woody Allen, writing in a 2012 email back to someone who says, Les convention? And Epstein writes, I think is the plural. I mentioned again that there are a lot of videos of females. Again, we don't know the ages, blacked out, redacted. You can kind of get a sense of maybe what is going on. People walking around look like they're modeling. And remember, Epstein was accused of being linked to model scout Jean-Luc Brunel, who was facing his own sex crimes charges before he died. And Epstein also founded and built a modeling agency. So we try to make sense of what these videos could be, perhaps, and why they're part of the Epstein files. Again, disturbing, like this video of a female seemingly wearing bunny ears and making what sounds like kissy noises. And there's a lot of like
Strange.
blacked out and redacted faces and bodies, but a lot of females dancing. We mentioned in our prior episode about people dancing in what appears to be Epstein's office. I think this one is Epstein with, again, who appear to be females. Take a look.
It's amazing out here. Don't look like money.
Keep going. It's amazing what happens to you. Keep playing.
Something that I find strange about this, and it is very difficult to see through all of the redaction inside of these videos, and you're going to hear this through other video clips within this video, the girls that are inside of the footage seem to be laughing and giggling. Like you could hear the woman that's behind the camera laughing like she's joking around, and kind of the same from the person that's in front of Epstein. It just struck me as a little bit odd regarding everything that we know now.
Now, I also realized we didn't play the actual sound from the video of Epstein seemingly chasing around females in a kitchen. Take a look.
You hear it again there.
There have been allegations that Jeffrey Epstein housed his apparent victims. The New York Post reporting that he kept them at a condo that was apparently just blocks away from his townhouse. Now, I'm not saying this apartment is that, but to give you an example about gifting apartments, this is an example of what I'm talking about. The FBI had this form, and it was about an interview with the FBI and federal prosecutors. It was in 2019, where this alleged victim claims that Epstein and his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted of sex trafficking, 20 years in prison, sexually abused her when she was 14 years old. And I want to read you a portion of this. Redacted's interaction with Epstein faded out. Redacted would make excuses. In approximately 2001, she stopped contact with Epstein and Maxwell. Redacted had a boyfriend at the time who questioned who Epstein was. Epstein called and screamed at her, telling her how ungrateful she was. Epstein's attorney, Darren, known to law enforcement as Darren Indike, contacted Redacted and told her that she owed Epstein $10,000 because Epstein co-signed for an apartment in New York City where Redacted and her family lived. At this time, the apartment had been leased out to someone who was not paying the rent. So whenever I see these videos of like an apartment tour, I do wonder, were these videos being sent to Jeffrey Epstein so he could approve of it? You know, if he was signing off on it, if he was paying the rent, if he was paying apartments, something I thought about.
Yeah, because he is doing things to hold things over people's heads, to have control over those people. And what better way than to do that throughout their career and throughout where they actually live? So having control of where people live can really give Epstein that dominant control that he wants over that person, because without him, they have no home. Now let's take a look at some footage of Epstein actually in deep dialogue and in deep conversation, because what we're about to watch are different pieces of footage that were meant for a documentary after he had been convicted of his initial crimes. These were put together to try to clean his name and make sure that the community and the people look at him in a different light than the negative light that was already shining over him as basically a criminal for the lack of better words. And you have to wonder, why do all of these rich people that have everything that they could want, why do they want to associate themselves with Epstein? Do they want the young girls that he has surrounding him at all times? Do they want to spend time on his plane or on the island? Well, we're not really sure, but he's going to share with you a bit here about his career as an expert finance member of society that was able to help these people with tons of money better their financial situations, which could be another key as to why people wanted to have a relationship with Epstein.
The knowledge of money isn't, they don't have expertise, they have no degrees in finance. They really, and this is one of the major problems, their expertise, if they have any financial knowledge, is of their own checking account or bank account and filling in their own taxes. So many world leaders who don't really have a financial underpinning make fundamental errors when it comes to money on a country or institutional level. Let me give you an example. If you, Mr. Bannon, if I said your assets increased last year, you'd say, that sounds pretty good. And I'd say, what does that mean to you? You'd say, well, I have more money. I guess I'm wealthier. I'd say yes. And if your debt increased, would you feel wealthier or poorer? You'd say, well, I don't want to have increased debt. I don't like the idea of that sound, increased debt. Now, that and world leaders understand when their assets go up, they feel better. I'm in a privileged position to have some of the world's smartest people come to my house and tell me what they think about different subjects. And I finally realized that the thing that they had most in common was there was this area, no matter how smart they were, that when I asked them the questions, they said they'd have to resort to a 500 or 1,000-year-old response to that question, which was, I don't know.
So basically what he's saying here is he is an expert, a self-proclaimed expert in finance. And all of these world leaders, all of these experts, scientists in other areas, they are not financial experts. So Epstein was able to lend them a hand with their finances so that they were in a better financial situation to appease the government, to get more money from all of their earnings, et cetera, et cetera. And this could have been a very valuable asset to many of these people because when you make a ton of money, you have to figure out ways to not get taxed extensively on that large amount of money. And I'm sure Epstein was able to give them some solid advice with that.
So again, it's like this idea that he saw the financial system in a way maybe they didn't. He was able to earn them a return that they couldn't get otherwise. He was a good financial advisor. I thought this was interesting too when he was locked up while the 2008 financial crisis was happening, especially since at one point in his life, Jeffrey Epstein was part of a firm, Lehman Brothers, that was very much involved in all of that. Take a look.
The night before you go to bed, it doesn't dawn on you at all. You never have a moment of self-reflection that, how did I end up on this metal cot when I should be at the center of things?
No, I had a telephone, so I've said, I can talk to, it makes no difference where I am, in fact. I'm still talking to the same person if I was at my home in Palm Beach. But I'm here in jail.
Home in Palm Beach.
I can dial my own phone.
No, but you can also make 1,000 phone calls. Here you got to make one, and he's got to take.
Think how much better that was. I had to decide who was the right person to call. That was unusual for me.
This is interesting because he's talking about his experience in prison, and he is not talking about it in a negative light. He said he's able to conduct business as he typically would in his home in Palm Beach with that one phone call. And oh, you could only have one phone call instead of 1,000, but he made it seem like that one phone call, only being able to have one phone call, was actually an enlightening ability for him so that that one phone call could be the most optimal one to put everything lined up in the right situation. He is not willing to say or admit that prison was a bad experience for him. And maybe it's because it actually wasn't.
And then I want you to listen to when he's pressed on going to jail on those Florida charges back in the day.
You had to make just 2 collect calls. You cannot tell me sometime during that day you did not have that conversation with yourself of how the did I do this to myself to put myself in West Palm Beach in a 6x9 cell with a metal bed with a brown shirt that said trustee spelled wrong?
So did I find it amazing that I was there? That's a
Not
better-
amazing. I don't want to say it was not funny. Oh, I thought it was.
I wasn't funny.
Right.
But
Not amazing.
no, it was incredible.
Incredible in what way?
This-
Incredible, like how do I do this to myself?
No. It's as incredible as me sitting here in this house. They're both just two sides of the coin. That's how I think about it. That my life today is incredible.
Do you consider yourself a stoic?
No. I consider myself a hermit. Stoics are not very happy.
Being a hermit then, being in that 6x9 cell, being in the cell qua the cell was not the problem, right?
Correct.
What was the problem?
Again, he's not saying that he had any issue with being in prison. That being in prison is just as surprising as him being inside of the large mansions, but opposite sides of the coin. Pretty bad, it's a pretty good. And it's just strange how he just can't admit that he didn't enjoy his experience. Except for one thing in prison. And can you guess down below, what's the one thing that he didn't like in prison? Let's see how much you know.
The eating the almond joy bars.
Because you couldn't eat the food.
No, right. Remember, my life is.
Did that ever strike you that I can't eat the food because somebody might have done something to it? I gotta live off an almond joy bar, one a day or two a day or whatever. How many ever sneak in a day?
No sneaking in.
Your one almond joy bar, it did not hit you at some time? How the did I do this?
Did you hear why he can't eat the food? It wasn't because he didn't like the food. He was worried that he was going to be poisoned from the prison food. That someone in the prison, either someone in the kitchen or some of the guards, wanted him done with, and he was worried that he was going to be poisoned. So all he could eat were almond joy bars while in prison.
No.
By the way, I just thought this was an interesting exchange when Epstein talks about what he was wearing in jail.
So I was wearing a brown jumper and a brown pair of pants given to me by the jail with the word trustee on the back.
Because you had qualified to be a trustee?
Well, the funny part was it was spelled Trusty. So I wasn't really sure. I'd been a trustee in many different operations, but it was the first time it was actually printed on my back.
So first of all, that's strange that the jail can't spell that right. That's the first thing. But second, like, it's kind of a joke to him. Everything about this situation is very light-hearted, funny, and jokey about his time in prison.
And spelled incorrectly.
Probably had a higher level of being a trustee at that than you had at all the boards that you were trustees, right?
Yes, right, because as the trustee meant you get two devices to clean your toilet as opposed to one.
Yeah, but it also meant that you had some sort of personal fiduciary own responsibility for oneself, right?
In the jail? You mean?
Well, that's what being a trustee is. That's why they give you two.
Yes, you get two cleaners. Yeah. I was a trustee in the jail because I was able to teach some of the kids to help them get their GED. So that's how they gave me a trustee job.
There's another piece of footage that we have to look at here because it's quite interesting.
There's something deeply up with you.
When you say ownership in the system, it doesn't mean...
Let's start over.
Okay.
Yeah. So flip
Sorry.
over your phone too, because
Yes.
I don't want anyone to see
Yeah.
on your phone. So maybe flip it down or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows what the comes up on that phone.
That's correct.
Who knows what comes up on that phone? They don't want anyone to see it, which is obviously very true. His phone is right there. He's doing this for a documentary. Of course, keep in mind that this is rehearsed and they will cut out anything that needs to be cut out, like that blooper right there. But they talk to him about him being evil right now.
Which one has sent you?
KSA.
I can't not believe I've got the magic moment when you're in prison or jail, wherever the it is,
It's
in
crazy.
solitary.
Now, there's a funny part to that we missed, which is said.
Go ahead, tell it.
The funny part is just what you asked me.
Is there anything funnier than that?
No.
For black humor,
I don't make any black comments. Sorry. You asked me what I was wearing.
That's right. You're too wrapped up in the Me Too movement.
Yes.
Just ask a question. Is your money dirty money?
No, it's not. So, in fact,
Why is it not dirty money?
because I earned it. A heart.
But you earned it.
I earned it legally.
We went back to this before. You earned
Yes.
it. You earned it advising the worst people in the world, right? That do enormous bad things, and just to make more money.
So, instead of asking me the question, should you take the money? Because I think it's a legitimate question.
You think it's a legitimate question?
Yes, no
Why?
question. Because I think about it, I think ethics is always a complicated subject, but I can tell you that with the money I gave to help try to eradicate polio in Pakistan and India, instead of asking me whether that money should be given to these children for vaccines, I think you might want to ask their mothers who received the vaccine, who know their child now won't get polio, and ask them if Epstein should have helped these people.
If we walked in, you're a mathematician. We walked into that clinic where they're giving that money out to these people that are in the most dire straits of poverty and sickness, and told them that the money was coming from class 3?
Tier 1.
Was tier 1's the highest and worst?
No, I'm the lowest. I'm the lowest.
You're the lowest. Okay, tier 1, you're the lowest. But a criminal.
Yes.
That the money came from them. What percentage of people do you estimate? I understand you don't like probabilities. Do you estimate would say, I don't care, I want the money for my children?
I would say everyone said, I want the money for my children.
Did they know where the money came from?
I think if you told them, if I told them the devil
100%. Himself.
The devil himself said, I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
All right, so him saying that he has a good mirror means that even though he does all this evil, when he looks at himself in the mirror, he is able to not see all that evil. And I have a question for you. If you have a sick child, and being a parent myself, you know that you will do anything for your children. Would you take dirty money, or as they're saying, money from the devil, to save the life of your child? And I would bet that many people would do that because they would do anything for their children.
It's a serious question. Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember, the devil is somebody knows.
Smart?
The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
No, the devil scares me.
He is at the number 1 or 2 archangel, and the reason he goes to hell and leads the rebellion is because he can't be the top guy. And his thing is, I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven.
I saw that in a movie once called American Dharma. I don't remember who said it. Okay, we have to go.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I'm sure that you guys just found a bunch of footage that you've never seen before within this video. If you did and found it valuable, please subscribe to the channel because I want to keep you guys up to date on this every day.